Yo, what's going on YouTube, and welcome to another video. So I want to go over the Chief Challenge, like mid-season bosses here, and what I've been testing on the test server to help you guys get the best results for this event. There are two main things to pay attention to. There's the damage rewards, which you want to get at least 22 million on each of the bosses so that you can get your Utior character here, which is going to be one of the characters you get from the shop. As well as with all these crystals that you're getting, you'll be able to buy other stuff, probably legendary scrolls, dice, etc. There's also these events, quests, which you can do, which are separate from the bosses. But here on the bosses, like I said, 22 million. And then beyond that, the most important thing for the end of season rankings, which actually determines your end of season rank quite a bit here, is the damage rewards. Or the ranking rewards for who does the most damage. And this is going to be an accumulative number based on your total damage for that week across all bosses. So you're going to want to have, as high as damage as possible each week so that you can get a good rank and get more points for the end of the season ranking. So that's really the main thing. So beyond 22 million, I mean, honestly, 22 million is not even hard. You can do that easily with even free to play characters. But the goal is to try and get, hundreds of millions to compete on those rankings. All right, so I'm going to start off with the first boss, which is the Lendor. And I'll go over his mechanics as well as some teams that you can use. So his mechanic is pretty simple. He takes 240% more damage from the allied summoned unit with the highest attack. That includes Lowanis. When she turns into a dragon, she's counted as a summon. So she's like the go-to if you want to do a bunch of damage here. But also epic summon like the one from Astarion is pretty good at doing damage here as well. That would be more for a budget team if you don't have Lowanis. But honestly, this boss, he's a bit of a pushover. He's probably the easiest boss. He doesn't have any really hard mechanics you got to deal with. He used to give rally to himself back in the day, but I think they either forgot or haven't added it, or maybe it's a bug, I don't know. But he doesn't even give himself rally on this version of the game. As you can see here on the battle skills, he doesn't give himself rally. So you don't need anyone to remove or block his buffs. You just need someone to give you some shields or some healing when he ults, or attack penalty maybe, so that you don't die to that ult. But as long as you can survive his ult damage, this boss is kind of a joke, and you can throw any of your best Vortex team comps into this fight and probably get 200 million. So I should also mention that, yeah, after 200 million damage, boss takes 90% less. So most teams are going to be aiming for that mark. And maybe they can get a bit more, maybe like 220 or something. But if you want to be competitive on the rankings, 200 is the goal. And then every little bit after that will also count towards, being slightly higher rank. So you want to get a little bit more than 220 if you can. Or sorry, than 200, sorry. So yeah, this boss is a pushover, easy boss. You could probably for the first week just throw your Vortex team at this, get 200 million, no problem. But as the weeks go on, so the way this works is the first week you get 2 attempts. You can fight each boss once, and you can use each hero once. So once you've fought one of the bosses or used a team, you can no longer use them again or fight that boss again. So eventually, each week is going to add 2 more attempts, and by week 3, we're going to have 6 total attempts, meaning we can fight each of the bosses once. And so you're going to want to have it spread out so that you have the strongest team against each boss separated. And so you ideally can get as much damage as possible across all bosses. And because they all have slightly different mechanics, that means the team that you're going to use the first week to crush the Lendor might end up being used on a different boss later on. So just keep that in mind. If you throw your wild team in here and get 200 million onto Lendor the first week, that's fine. But by week 3, you're probably going to want to use wild somewhere else, because there are much harder bosses than the Lendor, and you can maybe still get 200 million with a weaker team. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, so that's the Lendor, easy boss. Just got to have shields or attack penalty or defense up or some kind of survivability buffs during his ult, and you should be able to survive the full 5 minutes and do 200 million damage with any variant of a good Vortex team will get that job done. Now, moving on to Vasa, this guy has more mechanics we got to deal with. So the first mechanic is he basically gets extra damage if he heals. So you want to have healing reduction or healing reversal on him as much as possible the entire fight. And I mean, if you've got Berengar, that's a great option. But what I'm going to show you guys is a setup using Thea. Because Thea has a low cooldown and she does healing prohibition. And so she's going to keep that up for a lot of the fight. And we've got here a very budget Vasca team that is able of getting 200 million here. So this is the most budget version I could make with all free heroes. And this can get 200 million, surprisingly. So this is a good boss to use as one of your budget teams. You use your best Vortex teams to get 200 million, and then maybe you make this team third because it's going to be the easiest to put together. It doesn't require legendary scrolls. It's just a bunch of epics and Urian, who's a free legendary you should all have. And we don't even need to scroll him. We could probably just use Incense Burner on him to get his cooldown a little bit lower so that he can ult on time. But basically, we're keeping healing prohibition on this boss the entire fight. Also, this boss gains buffs on his battle skills. He gains this massive attack up and attack speed up, so we're going to want to have someone who can either block or remove that. And that's why we have Vareshen here to help with that. And then we just want AoE damage. So he summons, this boss summons, and there's going to be a bunch of summons out on the field. And the damage to those summons contributes to the damage to the boss. So you want someone who can, do a lot of AoE damage here. And the best for that is Frost. And we're going to put in a Frost applier like Rava here, and then a damage dealer that will benefit from that Frost like Vidimir. So this team will be able to do 200 million. And the way that you want to time these guys is honestly, you probably want to do this fight on manual, simply because there's a mechanic called Frozen that comes from Frost that will slow this boss down. And so timings are very hard to do on auto. It's going to get all over the place. So manualing is going to be your best way of dealing with this fight. So Thea's the only one I would say you could just leave her on auto. She doesn't matter. As long as she's applying that healing prohibition as much as she can, she's doing her job. But Urian, we want to time him like this. Right before the boss ults to give us that damage reduction. And then after the boss ults, he is going to summon. And at this point, when he's got more summons out on the field, we can apply our Witch's Remains. And then we can drop our Frost down on all these summons, including the boss, on like a big diamond here. And then Vidimir is going to wait, maybe a couple seconds after that Frost gets applied by Rava. And then we're going to ult with him and do a bunch of damage. And that's kind of the order you want to go in. And if you keep up that order throughout the entire fight, you can do 200 million with this budget team. Now, if you want to upgrade this team and do even more and maybe get to like 240, 250, then you can start adding in more legendaries. So if you add in, for example, Losenia instead of Rava, that's another damage increase. You'll, do 200 with like a minute to spare. And then if you add in Havitar with Losenia instead of Vidimir, again, you'll get even more damage. And I think this team gets 200 million with like almost 2 minutes still to spare. So tons of damage. This boss, probably the most budget friendly, since you can make a free to play team do 200. Whereas a lot of the other ones, I couldn't make that happen no matter what I tried. Moving on. So let's go to the next boss. Actually, let me go back to Thalendor real quick to show you guys what I came up for the budget team. So a budget team on Thalendor is going to be something like this. So we have Istarion as our main damage dealer. And we're doubling his summon with Centralia. And that summon is going to, do 240% more damage because of this boss's mechanic, like I said. And then we have Ledhelia in here for some extra damage. Everyone should have her, as well as having more summons out on the field does increase your survivability because the damage from Thalendor is spread between all targets. And so having like the Phoenix plus 2 of Istarion summons plus Ledhelia's summon is going to add more targets for the damage to be spread out amongst. And that'll keep you alive. And then we're using Estella as our tank and Zarloth back here to increase our healing, add us, give us some additional healing as well as apply our Witch's Remains. And then we have, again, Centralia to buff and make Istarion do a bunch of damage, and Ledhelia is kind of coming in second here as far as the damage is concerned. So that's the team, and the timings for that team are just full auto. It's very hard to time teams like summons. You just let them do their thing. It doesn't really matter too much. You could, I guess, time Estella to heal after Thalendor ults to heal up after that, but yeah, it doesn't matter too much. All right, moving on to the next boss. Let's go to the third boss, which is Twitch. So Twitch is similar to Vasca, where we want to do AoE damage, except now we want to also cleanse, because we gain these stacks of damage up or attack up every time we cleanse debuffs. Also, this boss takes 50% more damage from AoE skills, so AoE is going to be good here. And so we want to be cleansing or resisting or have debuff immunity to build up those stacks as much as possible, so that by the end of the fight we have 200 stacks and we're doing way more damage. So the goal here is that. And the team that I came up with for if you have, you know, a lot of the legendaries and stuff is you can use a rally team like this should work. But the team I had best success with was actually, you could also end up using Thalendor if you wanted to, but I don't think I used Thalendor just because he's an exclusive a lot of people don't have. So I was able to do 200 million without him with this team. And you could probably replace either Huberg or Filta with Thalendor if you have him. But this team is great because Jillian is a ranged tank, and she can basically cause these twitches to move up at the beginning. And so they're going to move up a tile to be in range, and that's going to put them in a diamond shape. And because they're in that diamond shape, they can then get hit by the full Huberg ult, for example. So getting those twitches to move up into a diamond shape will help you here on this fight. So having a ranged tank, or you can do the same thing with a melee tank, but you need to have him start in the very back if you're going to do that. But basically, the way that this works is Jillian is giving us cleansing and debuff immunity and stuff. No, wait, she's just dispelling the buffs. Never mind, not debuff immunity, but she's dispelling the buffs, which is giving us those stacks. And she can also have this artifact here with the staff to give us even more cleansing. So we're just going to be cleansing as much as possible. And those stacks are going to build up, and then we're going to do a bunch of damage over the course of the fight. And for timings here, I just have her ulting before the boss does so that we have that defense up so we take less damage. And that's happening every 18 seconds. And then the rest of these guys, their timings aren't that important. This guy's going to ult pretty much every 15 seconds. Filto turn boosts himself, so you want to let him do his thing. And then Alton, we have timed to basically go, I don't know, 9 seconds here before Huberg, just to make sure we have a chance of getting the defense penalty on all the targets before Huberg ults, because we're using Alton as the defense down applier. And you can look at the gear here, pretty straightforward, using the same tricks we did for Vortex with one person with the Ancestral, or one person with the Puppeteer set, and one person with the 3-ear set, and then our support slash tank slash healer, you know, solo support character with the Ancestral set with the, you know, Cleansing Mythic. And for her, I felt like Staff was the best at surviving the whole fight. You could try Horn to get a little bit more damage, but you might die a little sooner. So that's worth a try, but I would say Staff was best here. All right, so that's the expensive team. Now the budget version of this is another rally team again, if I can find it, is this team right here. So we basically took out all the legendaries and are only using epics. We couldn't survive with just Catherine to try and, you know, simulate what Jillian was doing. So we had to add in Garius as well. But, you know, with these two together, you can survive the full 5 minutes. And then we have room for 3 DPS. So we'd put in the best that the epics have available and the rares have available for rally, which is Hegio, Welby, and Tathlin. So Tathlin's giving us rally and applying Witch's Remains. Welby is ulting a lot and he does AoE damage, and then so does Hegio. He's ulting a lot and also doing AoE damage. Now the part about this fight which is interesting is this Hegio is actually gonna ult back here. So what we need for him to be in range, well, he's not gonna be, well, first of all, he's not gonna be in range of Catherine, so he's not gonna get the debuff immunity. So for him to be able to cleanse himself, we're actually using this mythic here. When the wearer's ultimate skill recharges, completely dispels all negative effects from the hero. And you could also use this mythic on the other teams on this boss if you want to get that cleansing a little more often. But we've got it set up here in this team so that Catherine is cleansing or putting debuff immunity on our backline. Garius, whenever he ults, he cleanses himself. And then again, when Hegio's ultimate recharges, he will cleanse himself, and he's going to be back here hitting all 3 of these guys. And yeah, this team works pretty decently as far as budget teams are concerned for 65 million. This is one of the harder bosses, so don't expect too much on this boss. I tried to make a Frost team work here, but Frost did less damage than they did on Vasca, so I felt like they should be reserved for that Vasca boss. All right, moving on to Venara. Venara, she basically takes increased damage from single target, so stuff like Wild is going to be good here, or Dauntless, I guess. But you're going to probably save your Dauntless for Chrysos, and I'll go over that later. But basically, for each dispelled, each buff dispelled from the boss, she takes 25% increased damage. So you want to dispel her buffs. And also, she has another mechanic, which you have to go into the fight to check, and that is she gains a shield. And if it's not dispelled, she'll gain a permanent 10% damage reduction stack, and that goes up to 10 stacks. So if you don't have some way of removing the shields, she'll eventually take 100% reduced damage, so you do 0 damage. So the key here with this fight is you got to remove the shields and you want to remove the buffs if you can as well. Now, the expensive version to do this fight would probably be a wild team with like Chrysos. Chrysos can remove buffs and he can also remove shields. He does it all. So I'm not going to even show you guys that. That team can do 200 million, no problem. But what I came up with here for a budget team, which I was pretty impressed by, is this team here, which is, again, no legendaries. And we're making use of this epic here, which is an absolute giga chat on this boss. He kind of solo carries. He is able to remove the shields, and you can time this on his ultimate, as well as his passive allows him to gain a massive shield from Venara shielding herself. And this shield is so big that he is able to tank her ult and basically take very little damage, and he can solo tank this entire fight. You don't even need a healer in here. So he just does it all. Now, Gloin is in here because he is a buff remover, and he can do that on the ult. You can time that. And he also hits 3 times, so he's going to be good for applying our Witch's Remains. And with these two characters together, we can take care of all the mechanics we want to here on Venara, and that leaves us room for 3 DPS. And I went with a budget wild setup. These guys are all single target, so they should be getting that damage bonus. And this team goes for 80 million. And for the timings here, we basically just want him to ult as soon as he can to remove the shields, and the same thing with Gloin to remove those buffs as soon as possible. But you do need to gear him kind of specifically. You want accuracy because you need to have accuracy to remove those buffs. Also, if you can get the attack penalty, that's nice for survivability. But we also need resistance. And the reason for that is this boss is going to apply Frozen on you, which is going to slow down your ultimate energy. So we're not going to be able to keep up with the boss unless we have resistance. So I went for resistance and accuracy, and you honestly don't need that much tank stats on him because he gets such a massive shield. But after you get enough resistance and accuracy, that's going to be your next goal, is getting defense. And of course, a rally invest, very good on him because he's going to give himself a massive shield. So that's how I built him. I built him with 2 accuracy sets, 1 resistance set, and then I'm using resistance rune, resistance body armor. And then Gloin is just accuracy. He's buffing us with 3 ears. We've got one of these guys turn boosting us, I think. Maybe I forgot to do that. Yeah, no. We have Foley here turn boosting us. And then just Tononon built for damage here. I went for Horseshoe because she already gets enough crit. She only needs about 80%. Because once her stacks up on the passive, she'll have 100%. So this is the only crit damage artifact that wasn't like a mythic. And since this is a budget team, I tried to stick to like mostly legendary artifacts if I could. Only mythics I'm using are Aurelian Vest and Witches, and honestly, you probably don't even need this. You could probably put some other artifact on him and he'll still survive. He doesn't even go below half HP for me when the fight's over at 5 minutes. So yeah, he's an absolute carry on this fight. You're going to want to use Brody if you don't have someone like Chrysos. All right, so moving on to Chrysos, this boss takes additional damage from basic attacks, basically double the damage. So you want to use basic attack based characters like Dauntless. He'll also put a shield up, which for 40 hits, he'll be immune to damage. So you want to break that as fast as possible. So again, Dauntless, they are fast attacking and they do a lot of auto attacks. They were designed for this fight. And if you put a team like this in, the full Dauntless team, you'll have no issue getting 200 million on this fight. The main thing is the timings. You want to have someone that can cleanse you because he will be applying an attack penalty on you on the ult, as well as this passive will apply a weaken debuff on you, so you deal less damage. But that debuff only lasts for as long as he has that shield. So the goal here is to break the shield, the weaken buff gets removed on its own, cleanse the attack penalty, and then, it's an attack speed penalty, even worse for Dauntless. Cleanse that, and then you ult after the shield is broken, because at that point, the boss will be able to take damage again. So the way that we're going to time this is I just had Nathaniel ulting basically right before the boss to protect us, give us some defense up. Even though his shields are getting removed, that's not really why I was using him. I was using him for the cleansing and the defense up. You could, if you wanted to, build him with no enlightenment, since his shields are just going to get removed anyway, and just build him full HP. That way he can heal more. But honestly, healing's not an issue if you have Lifesteal Mythics. These Lifesteal Mythics are going to do a lot for keeping your DPS alive on this Dauntless team. So Lifesteal Mythics are really good for making Nathaniel's job a lot easier and allowing you to survive the full 5 minutes. And then, yeah, with the DPS, you're just ulting. It's going to vary based on your team, but you're just ulting as soon as you can tell that that shield is broken, and you can play that on like 1x or 2x or whatever to see when that happens. You're going to be ulting as soon as it breaks, because that's the point at which you can start to actually do damage. So see there, the shield just broke. I should have ulted by now, but so there, the shield is at 40, and then it goes down to 0, and then I start ulting, you see? So I basically timed it like that. I'm going at about 22 seconds because that's when I know the shield is broken, and that's when I'm going to be able to do damage. Now, moving down to a more budget version, I've taken out most of the legendaries, including the exclusive, and I've just kept Avelios. Without him, we do so much less damage. I felt like he's kind of mandatory here if you want to do decently. But for the budget team, we're putting in Shagrel instead of Sutha, Nimbus instead of Thorval, and I guess Shaltar is pretty good here instead of Nashenka. And yeah, same timings pretty much, but we're just trying to, you know, do that damage with the Dauntless as best we can. And this team goes for, what is it, 62 million, yep. All right, moving on to the final boss. And this was, I think, the hardest boss to figure out and get a good team on. So if you wanted to, by the last week, if you've already got solid teams for all the other bosses, I would put your strongest team here and just get the 200 million with your wild team or whatever. You know, if I throw my Dauntless or wild teams in here, my full, you know, legendary Vortex squad, I can get 200. But this boss without a really good team is quite tricky and difficult. So, but I was able to come up with something here that is very budget, that does quite well actually, and I'm very impressed with this. And that is this team here. Also, yeah, okay, I'll explain the mechanics real quick. So this boss takes additional damage based on the amount of stacks of debuffs on the boss. So up to 50 stacks, it takes 5% increased damage up to 50 stacks, and that's based on each debuff you've got. And I think that counts poisons, and poisons can go up to 40 stacks. So with 40 poisons up on the boss, you're going to do significantly more damage. And for each type of debuff, you also do more damage, so ideally you want more types of debuffs. So the team that's going to be the most consistent here for 200 is if you have like the full, you know, the full legendary Vortex poison team with Lothair, because you're going to have 40 poisons up the whole fight. You're going to be able to extend those, and then Lothair is just going to do a bunch of damage, and that should be a pretty easy 200 million. But as far as a budget team goes, what I came up with, I'm pretty impressed by. I got it up to 110 million here on arguably the hardest boss mechanically to deal with. And the way that we're doing that is actually quite interesting. So she does attack penalty on both of her battle skills. And then on her ultimate, she does buff prohibition. And if you don't have any buffs on your team, she'll also stun you. And so this boss is pretty tough to deal with. I thought about using someone that puts up 2 buffs. That way we could avoid getting stunned, because she's going to remove one of those buffs with her passive here every 18 seconds. And then we need that second buff there to prevent us from getting stunned. But what actually ended up working better, which I was surprised by, was resistance. And the way we can get enough resistance is quite interesting here. So first of all, we have Vikuk. He's going to be doing accuracy penalty. And that accuracy penalty is going to reduce her accuracy from 240 all the way down to 120. And so to resist her at 120 accuracy, we actually don't even need that much resistance. So with just the Psyche Core plus a little bit of resistance on everyone, like 50 resistance or so, as well as using a guy with this talent where adjacent allies gain 20% of the hero's resistance, I was able to set it up so that we never got stunned, we never got debuffed, and we can just ignore the mechanics entirely and do our thing. So Garen here, I built him with a bunch of resistance, 350, and he has the horn because he's going to boost our damage with his healing. And with him, you know, having everyone surrounding him, he will give that 20% of his resistance to allies. And then with them having about, I don't know, 50 or so each, plus the Psyche Core, plus the bonus he's giving, we end up having enough resistance to ignore the boss because she's going to be under accuracy penalty pretty much the whole fight. Now, this fight was interesting because when I tried to do combat simulations, it did way less damage. I think it might be bugged. So when in doubt, do this fight manually. But manually, this does 110 million, which is really good. So yeah, it did 89. I don't know. I was able to survive the full 5 minutes and do 110 on manual. Something weird is going on there. But basically, the idea here is we've got our main damage dealer being Eli. He's going to do derivative damage, so we want to build him with basically the same gear you would put on like a Flora, just a bunch of enlightenment and attack. And we're going to have him in the back here. And then we have Shink to apply poisons. He does quite a lot on his ultimate. I didn't even finish, getting the talents on him, so you can maybe get more damage than me. But we have him in this set where he gains a damage bonus for each debuff he applies. That's going to give him, I think, is 32% more damage most of the fight. So that's good on him. He's also our Witch's Remains applier because he hits 5 times on the ult. So he's going to be putting up poisons and applying defense penalty. We've got Corrin in here with the Hourglass and one of these turn boosting sets with some skill haste on the runes. He's going to be able to extend our poisons permanently to keep us at least at 30 poisons the whole fight. And then we'll get up to 40 sometimes when Shink applies the, with the ult. And then Vikuk's pretty important here. We want both accuracy and defense because he's our main tank. He's going to be applying that accuracy penalty, the attack penalty from his battle skill. Accuracy penalty on the passive, attack penalty on the battle skill, and then also healing us and cleansing us. Although the cleansing's not that important because honestly, we don't really get any debuffs on us. Now, positioning here is also important because this boss does a forward-facing diamond attack with her battle skill, which means, at least with my setup here, the only person who seems to ever get hit is Vikuk. Maybe Garion is getting hit as well, but I can't tell. So for some reason in this setup, only Vikuk gets hit, I guess. I don't know. It's weird. But this positioning is pretty important for avoiding taking too much damage from that battle skill. Now, the hard part about this fight is keeping Eli alive. He's going to do this battle skill. That's going to give him this attack speed up. Every time he does that, he's going to take damage from this passive from Tamar. So he's going to take extra damage. So you might want to consider, maybe a little bit more defense on him if you can fit that, because he's usually the first to die. But he does the most damage on the team. He does quite a lot. He could do over 200,000. And like I said, surviving the full 10 minutes, this team can do like over 100 million with this setup. So I'm quite impressed with that budget team. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and I hope this helps you with your rankings. But before I leave you, I just want to remind you guys, if you want to help me out as a content creator for Dragonheir, you can, of course, bind to me as a creator. This will give you some rewards, as well as I'll get rewards, and then together we'll, earn rewards together. And then eventually I'll be able to do some giveaways and stuff on stream. And my creator code is literally just HypePseudo with a capital H, so really easy. And yeah, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask those in the comments or over on my Discord, or, catch me live on Twitch and ask me there. And I'll try to help you guys, because I didn't want to make this video too long and go into all the teams in too much depth, because I know my last video was a bit of an earful, being like 45 minutes long. So I'll try to do better in the future. But yeah. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed. Catch me in the next one, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, peace.